number 2. Video number 2 in this new series thing we're trying, hanging out with design staffs, talking about their indoor shows for the season. This one was I think this was random. This one randomly came up. We just decided to message one of these dudes one day, and they were just like, hell yeah, we'll do it.
Well, Cisco, shout out Cisco, actually reached out to me, who is also a Crown alumni, and was like, "Hey, I think the Infinity staff would be down to hang." And we're like, "Let's do it." And then we'll set up a group chat. And in Cisco fashion, he started a group chat, but he typed in Fantini's number wrong. So it originally started with, I think that guy said his name was Eric or something. He's like, "Hey guys, this is." I don't think you got the right person in this group chat. So then we just started another one. But
I didn't know
we got
the
to
wrong
figure
number responded.
Yeah, he did respond, and he kept talking, and I was like, "Thank God, no one else is actually replying to feed this." So he was just talking to himself, which was kind of funny.
That's awesome.
But yeah,
so as you can see from the video title today, we're hanging out with the Infinity design staff, or I think it's all of them, probably or more involved, but we've got 3 of them on today. Before we get into that, welcome everyone to the Aged Out Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Fantini, and with me as always is
Evan Worrell.
And before we get in even further, comment, like, subscribe on YouTube. If you're on podcast services, head over to YouTube. Comment, like, subscribe. It's super important. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Never miss an update about any new content we've got coming down the pipeline. Patreon.com/agedOutPodcast, or hit the join button right here on YouTube if you want to support us financially. You can do as little as 99 cents a month. Goes a long way, travel costs. We go to finals every year, all that stuff. But the viewership is appreciated no matter what, beyond anything else. All right. I'm going to switch the scenes here, bring these 3 guys on here, and then, Evan, you can take it away.
Yeah, we'll start off. So we have a trifecta here. We'll start off with Matt Albano. And Matt, just kind of take us through how long you've been with Infinity, kind of what your roles are, if there's multiple facets to it. And floor's yours.
Awesome. I've been with Infinity for 10 years, both as like a staff member and as an alumni. And my role is the front ensemble coordinator for the top Infinity group, as well as co-arranger for the front ensemble.
Heck yeah. So you and then I guess Mitchell are kind of working in tandem a lot?
Yeah. Mitchell and I have been working together basically since my age out. He's been kind of helping me get some writing gigs with Infinity 2 stuff when I was over there, and then slowly worked over to Infinity, and now we're just co-arranging.
Sweet. I'm sure that we will get a little bit more into that dynamic here soon as far as like when one person takes the lead. But that's a great segue into our other guest, which is Mitchell Beckman, who is also from the website, a front ensemble staff member. Take it away, Mitch. Or Mitchell.
That's right. What's up, everybody? My name's Mitchell. I've been at Infinity for 12 years now. My first year was actually Matt's first year. I was on staff for a couple years there, and then started the design process around 2017 with their second group, the open class group I2. From there, you'll hear later, Mike and I got promoted up to the design team at World, their first World ensemble, and was very fortunate to have Matt as my coordinator at I2 when we moved up to the World Class Ensemble. It's been pretty awesome seeing his transition to this designer role. So we're excited to have him there now. And it's been smooth sailing ever since.
Cool.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I know you touched on like the first World group. Now you have 2, which is awesome. I'm sure that'll probably come back up again.
I'm sure at some point.
And then we'll move back to the back of the scenes here, which Fantini and I have obviously been involved in. But the battery arranger, Mike Hansen. What's up, Mike?
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Mike Hansen. I'm a designer, battery caption head, and arranger for Infinity Percussion. Also a battery arranger for Infinity 2, the other world-class group.
The other
We're so fortunate to have 2 of them, man. We used to call them, it was I2, it would be like the open group, and now we just can't say that anymore. So it's like world and then other world.
What a great problem to have.
I was going to say that
Awesome.
That too, feeder program essentially, and like development ensemble, but it's just you and Pulse that have the 2 world groups. I think it's just your all's organizations now, because AQ2 is still open. I believe. I think it might just be you all on Pulse now.
Which, that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. You come out and you design a show that's, and the members are living up to it. So kudos to you guys. And what was your first year, Mike, with Infinity?
So I've been with Infinity for 15 seasons. So I did 3 as a member, and then started teaching and writing for I2 back in 2013. And then in 19, Mitchell and I went up to the World Ensemble, and then continued to do the I2 stuff as well. So I've been around for a little while with them.
Very cool.
And obviously that leaves, we have a lot of the musical package on with us, leaving a lot of the visual team, which is super important. Obviously, I know Richard Craven is listed on there as the artistic director, and then we have Dylan Charles, who I think is the visual designer. Does he do a lot of the staging and the dots? Is that correct?
That's right. So Richard is our artistic director. We're a team of 5, and then the 5th is Dylan Charles, who's our visual designer, choreographer, and drill writer as well.
Which I do have a lot of questions about, which I believe some of you all can probably answer about the visual program and just some of the things that are going on. But we'll start with you, Mitchell, and then we'll kind of let everybody else Jones off of this. When you guys are sitting down to design this year's show, when does that start happening? What does that look like? Is there like a Google Doc and a Google Drive that you guys share that you're tossing out ideas and like, hey, this is the one? Kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up. I'll balance this one between Mike and Matt for sure, but we absolutely, like, there's talks, well through the summer before. We try to give ourselves a month after finals, but that inevitably becomes like, 2 weeks later, we're like, hey, I got this great idea. There's a Dropbox, what is it, Paper? That's the website we use to just kind of unload ideas that we're very passionate about. Mike, if you want to take the lead on our 10 shows that we kind of and then lead into.
So we've probably, I would say we started around July this year. And it starts off as like just ideas, right? So an idea can come from anywhere. It can come from a song, a piece of artwork, whatnot. But for us this year, it started with a song. And that inspired just a general show design, right? So what we did was package maybe 10 different show designs with like musical inspirations and descriptions of what it could be, and like a breakdown of the different elements of that show could provide. And we started with, I think, 10 this year, and then narrowed it down to 2. And then from there, we liked both of these ideas that we were working with so much that we combined them into one idea. There was so much like connective tissue between the 2 design choices. It felt right to put them together. But like from a start, at least the inception of the idea, we narrowed it down to that, and then created a 30-second music sample to make sure that was the route we wanted to go on. And then from there, you're like kind of off to the races.
For sure. So is that originally, I'm assuming, with kind of the 5 of you all that we just talked about, like, hey, these are our 10, and then we whittle it down to 2, and then you guys are like, all right, let's really sink into these 2 are our favorites. What sort of music or vibe or maybe visual elements do you see to that? What colors do you see to that? Is it as far into that process already, or is it mostly just like, hey, this show could mean this to me, or this show, we could go this direction for me?
Yeah, well, specifically, I would say the 2 that we were bouncing between was a show called Human, and then a show but about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And like just the kind of through line about life, we would take advantage of. So for us, like when we do designs, they're very esoteric and abstract, and they're open-ended. So that putting those 2 ideas together is what brought us to We Were Here, which is essentially it's a show about life and what it means to be human. Like the idea that we came from nothing and end is nothing, and that mortality too compels us to live life to its fullest.
All right, we got it right. We got it right when we reacted.
Yeah. All right.
we dropped.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Spot on. Go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say sometimes you don't get it right. You think you watch a show and you're like, oh, I get it, and then you hear it actually explained when you're at finals, and you're like, wow, I did not.
But I would say, as a staff member that's been on I have been on a world-class PIW staff, like if the judge is like, yeah, like I got it and this is what it is, and I'm like, yeah, exactly. Even exactly.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we try to do, I mean, WGI, the crowds at WGI and the audience and the viewers are really educated and well-informed. So like, yes, the designs are esoteric and abstract, but we leave it in a way to where like the audience can take away what they need from it because they're smart enough to do that. You know, we're fortunate in that WGI crowds are the best crowds.
WGI crowds are it's very intimate, which is what I did always appreciate about the WGI setup versus DCI. I love DCI. Fantini's always on the
very
DCI.
partial to drum corps.
Yeah, Fantini's very partial to drum corps. I always love the intimacy of WGI and just what that brought as a connection to the audience. So then you guys pick the show. You decide we were here. Do you then start storyboarding out specific elements of that? Like, hey, we have this music in mind. What about this visual idea? Do you pick key moments that you try to hit and then like work front to back? Or maybe it's back to front to like, hey, we want to end this way. How do we get there? Take us through that a little bit.
Sure, for sure. So we started actually at the back end of the show. So when we talked about like creating 30-second to 60-second samples, the sample that we made actually was for our closer. Like that was how we're going to end the show. So after we decided that we liked that, then it was, moving backwards to the top of the show and then getting to that. But we definitely knew like the horizontal that we wanted to try to aim for. But for us, it starts off with that sample, and that's just like in Logic. So like for us, it was, I'm writing battery score to just lyrical lines in Logic, and then I send that to Mitchell and Matt, and then those guys go off on that Logic file. I don't know if y'all want to talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Part of it too was like, I think Mike, you found Stupid Deep by John Bellion, and that a lot of this stuff is like inspired. Like someone says on the team like something, and then we're like, let me see what I can do with that. So I first heard John Bellion, and I was like, okay, I know of this artist. Let me get to know more. And then I had found on Spotify an arrangement that he did of Meant to Live. And I listened to it. It's a very intimate, acoustic, emotional arrangement. And I sent it to the guys, and they're like, yes, this is exactly what we need to do in the show. And it's a through line with the same artist. So being able to use like his voice was throughout the whole show is really cool.
So the Stupid Deep piece is the very first introduction, the very first sample and lyric of the show. Just
correct.
Yeah, I went on a deep dive. I was like, what does this say? And Googling. So yeah.
It's funny, man. That is like the reason for doing the show, to be completely honest. Like, we talk about where ideas come from, and it's like you hear something that's so powerful, whether it's a melodic or a lyrical line. And for us, it was like, I remember hearing that lyric line, and it was like, man, what if who I had hoped to be was always me? Like that is emotional, and it creates like a visceral response. And I think for show design for Infinity, like that's one of our aims is can we put something out there and offer a program that allows or offers for people to feel something. So like that lyrical hook from John Bellion was the catalyst, I think, for everything that followed.
So
jumping on to that real quick, like you say that, like, and Stupid Deep was absolutely like the nucleus of our creative process. From there, you start to see the entire world as like, all right, how can we use this? I look to my right now, and there's like a bag. I'm like, how can I use this bag in the show? Like, but Matt comes in with like, here's this next track that we could potentially use, and it's super awesome to be able to find a song
So things have kind of fell into place and lined up pretty readily so far from a design standpoint. Like it's kind of just, I don't want to say designed itself, but with what you came to the table with, it's like, oh, this just kind of works, and then we can do this, and it's kind of just been easy to figure out what the next thing is in the evolution of the show, I guess, to develop it and flesh it out.
Yeah, just sometimes it just feels right. I mean, I remember, Matt, when you sent that Meant to Live track to us, I just put it on the car speakers and like immediately started bawling. I was just like, this is it. This is what we need. You know, it was like an easy choice.
Yeah.
For sure.
Part of it too, like the through line of what we're trying to do with life. So we wanted to pick certain moments in a broad life, being like the mundane life of self-reflection and of resurrection, if you will. And so to capture moments and to find source music that could do that was really fun to figure out. And it also like allowed us to have a diverse source material to arrange to. You know, like if I were to watch like snippets of our show, it's like totally different from one point to the other. You go to our second movement and it's very aggressive. And then you go to the end of the show and you're just like, was that the same show? It's right. Emotional.
So that leads me to something. Go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, go ahead, Fantini.
Okay.
I'll let you.
That leads me to something that I've been thinking about. I've watched the whole show a few times now, and so obviously you have that human theme. We were here, like of life. So it's more so what I'm getting so far is it's not necessarily about the journey of life from start to finish continuously. It's more so the different elements or chunks of the show highlight different themes within like a human life or different feelings. Sure. Is that the way to look at it? Less of a journey and more of just not a highlight reel, but just like certain concepts related to a human life.
Well, there's definitely a highlight reel, and that's towards the end, but we'll get to that. But yeah, man, like essentially, the horizontal of the program is like birth, like start nothingness, right? Birth, hopeful innocence.
Yes. All right.
That's like the first movement.
I'm going to
cut you. And then we go into the, oh, go ahead.
So yeah, the very first thing this will feed into, I think, what you're saying. Like you start off, majority of the group is in the very center. And when I watched that and what Matt had just said too about like almost resurrection, like it almost came across to me as like what you would see from somebody coming back to life from being burned on a pyre, like in the middle of like a Stonehenge circle. That's just what I saw. You know, you have like the way the props are laid out in this circular form, and like that's just where my brain went. And then you have the other ensemble members that just kind of wake up and they sit up. So I was like, all right, I get what we're doing here. So you're talking about that's like a birth moment, right?
Yeah, exactly. And some of the, I mean, where you're picking up on like the, I don't know, life starting over again too. Like that's kind of ties into the Tibetan Book of the Dead elements of this too, which is also play into the costuming and stuff. But the beginning, nothingness, birth, innocence, like that is the journey. It's very, very hopeful. And you move into like the secondary part of the show, and that's more the mundane life. So it's like repetitive, aggressive, frustrated. If you're looking at the props, we're using them as vehicles to carry the show in different abstract ways. So they turn into like desks in the back right-hand corner of the floor, and it's kind of a workplace in a factory setting. And if you're looking at the VE choreography, it kind of plays off of like starting down on the desk level and then rising through the company ladder higher than everybody else. And the battery goes into that form, and then they're kind of the workers and being controlled by the people up top, you know. And actually we're developing a new ending to that segment of the show this weekend. It's going to be really cool when that comes out. But that's like that frustration part of the show. And that takes you to then through that tenor feature, we get into the bass feature. It's more reflective. So, you know, all these, if you're looking at life, like these self inflicted moments of frustration and conflict and self-doubt, build these barriers in your head, and like behind all these features, we're building these walls and these barriers. And then ultimately, when we get to that self-reflection part of the show, it's the bass drums looking at themselves in the mirror. And there's a musical conversation that goes on. There's like, not only are the visual elements reflective, but also the music in itself are reflective, where there's call and answers and echoes from the bass drum to bass drum voice, but also the front ensemble to bass drum voice. That was a really fun piece to write.
I was hoping I had the opportunity to compliment you all on that bass drum front ensemble moment, because it's probably one of the most digestible, interesting, like, call and answer from the basses to the front, the boards and stuff, and just like there's so much little interplay. And I watched actually that marching vlog slot video. Go watch that, by the way, everybody, if you haven't yet, before we got on here to do this. And I think that's a theme, like, in the musical package that is everywhere throughout that entire show. There's like a snare moment early on where there's 1/6 randomly where some of the boards in the front just out of nowhere just layer right on top for one. The communication front to back is super cool, and that bass moment I feel like is the pinnacle of it within the show for me. It makes sense, that conversation you're talking about. It portrays that idea. The call and answer, just the interplay is just very satisfying.
All right. Speaking of call and answer, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to kind of get into Matt and Mitchell about their kind of back and forth co-arranging. But this will probably sound very vain, but it's fine. I am very proud of myself and like very happy for you all that, you know, I sent you some of my notes right after that snare solo. You talk about that mechanical moment where they're back there with the desks, and it did come across so assembly line-esque to me, where you're just like mundane and mechanical and very militaristic. So like it made perfect sense, and then it just gradually fades out as far as the volume of that into the next idea. So, you know, kudos to you guys. But we'll jump into and then I have a thought on the reflecting pool, but we'll get to that.
One thing at a time, Evan. One thing at a time.
But
it was so cool to watch your reaction, Evan. Like, Mike was going through, and you're like, yes.
Dude, dude, like,
it's really funny.
Well, when he said like, you know, he's like mundane and like a factory, I was like, yeah, all right. But so like for you, Matt and Mitch, we'll start with Mitch. But like when you guys are vibing back and forth, when do you decide like, hey, like you take the lead, I'll take the lead? What's that dynamic like?
It's been super amazing this past year, because Matt's always been my secret weapon these past couple of years, where it's like, here's this idea. My chops are not to the standard they were when I marched. I've been aged out for a couple of years now, decades. So it's been like, Matt, make this work. How does this work? And he comes up with something that's just far beyond what I could fathom. So he's absolutely been like the best tool in my bag of tricks. And this year it's been like, Matt, from the start, what can we do that is gonna set us apart from everyone else, but like also give us like this beautiful identity? And he's absolutely risen to the challenge. It's been amazing to watch. We started with, you know, all these Logic tracks that we've built, and he'll go in and just flesh it out into this beautiful arrangement. And then every week we've been able to hop on. I shouldn't say every week. It's every other day. It feels like the time.
For sure.
In between y'all's like sets at Disney and Universal, like when you're performing, I'm like, I think they're performing, and then I'll call and Mitch will answer on the boat, like when he's at Disney, and I just get to listen to them. And then we do our little design meeting. It's kind of funny.
That's Mike and I work at Disney World's Animal Kingdom and then Universal Studios. So we have the luxury of, in between the shows that we do throughout the day, to be able to work on this. This is our true passion. And then we just, you know, we're able to go make guests happy as a added benefit.
The way that you said that,
yeah. but it's cool because we'll jump on these calls with Matt, and it's like, let's work on this, and then we'll go do the show on the boat, come back, jump on the call again, and see what Matt has cooked up, and it's like, yes, that's it, or like maybe let's try this direction. But it's been super effective this year. It's a new route that we've kind of gone in terms of designing shows that has been really well received thus far.
I'll jump over to Matt, but I think that is ultimately the smart. I don't want to say smartest, but better brainstorming just breeds opportunities. But a lot of these arrangers that we talked to, even in the drum corps sphere, like you said, we've been aged out a while, and before we hopped on and recording, Matt's like, could you imagine like having your parts printed out in paper? And the rest of us are like, yeah, we did. But this newer generation, like they just know more and they've been exposed to more. And so we talked to a lot of these arrangers and they're like, yeah, like, I wrote this thing, but so-and-so who just aged out 2 years ago, they play tenors better than I did. So that's what they do. So Matt, when you get a part and Mitchell's like, hey, take this, like, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Do you ever come up with something you're like, ooh, that was way too much? Or you're like, yeah, I nailed it.
Yeah. It's ebb and flow all the time. I think we talked, Mitch and I have been working together since 2013. Like he was my staff member, and then he would arrange like lot tunes for the pit and I get to play his stuff. And then he went off to teach Infinity too. So I bring that up because we have been able to collaborate over these past couple of years from like 2000 for the top Infinity group is 2022 when we started to really compete again. And he would just send me like some Sibelius files and I just check it out whenever I had the chance and noodle around and then send it back. And then he would mess up with something, send it back to me. And that was basically like 2022, and then 23, I got a little bit more involved. So this is actually the first official year I'm on the design team from Jump Street, where we have been able to work together. But Mitch and I's passion for like our taste in music, especially cinematic music, is something that we really try to incorporate into our shows. So like there's a soundtrack we want you to hear whenever you're listening to an Infinity show. And we do a bunch of like stereo imaging. So like you'll hear something from the left or hear something from the right, or make it all in the center, because we want you to feel that in its places, because that's also what's going on the floor. Especially that pre-show opening moment, that's very apparent, but for all the noodly marimba and vibraphone stuff, most of the time it's just like understand where the chord structures are and what opportunities can we embellish with those mallet players. Like what would I want to play as a member? And I know that they would want to play it, kind of deal. Like the front ensemble writing over the past couple like years has really evolved because the front ensemble is so young. It's the youngest subsection of drum corps and indoor. Well, really drum corps.
I love that. And if say I was arranging for a group, like most of my career was spent playing snare drum. Well, all my career is spent playing snare drum. So whenever I'm writing things, even for high school, a lot of the tech staff that I have that have just marched drum corps or something, I'm like, hey, will you look at these bass parts? Like, this makes sense to me, but is this practical? So I just love that collaboration and the vibing back and forth to make sure that things are, engaging and exciting for the members that are playing them. That way they can dig into them on a more personal level. Couple things to circle back to. For this year's show, I know, Mike, you mentioned the costuming and what you guys were going for in that regard. So kind of touch on that a little bit.
Sure. Can I jump back in on this collaboration thing? Because I got
Yes.
some battery folks that
yes.
are real incredible. So like for us with the battery stuff, like I'll write a first draft, but then the first thing I do is send it to one of our staff members. His name's Lee Hansen, and he was like the tenor INE champion in '91. Man, he is quad guru. So everything that quad that gets put on paper, you know what I mean, that goes to him, and we filter through it and we pass it back and forth and collaborate and make it cooler. And that dude is just a rock star. So I'm super thankful for him. But once that process happens, then it goes to the coordinator staff, and then we talk and we have a back and forth on maybe red flags or things that need to be adjusted. And then once we're all good, it goes to the instructional staff, and we do the same process again, where we're back and forth addressing things that we think might be an issue or could be done a different way. And then it gets to the membership, and we learn live in context what needs to be adjusted again. So the whole process for us is a collaboration. And then a specific shout out to two members of our snare line. So we have Logan Graham and Riley Gee that put together our snare break in movement 2. And it is
my mind again.
Yeah, it's a monstrosity, man. It's really, really cool. And
is that the one that starts where they're all playing? Is that the one that starts where they're all playing a buzz roll and they each individually play that right, left, right, whatever the motif is, the sticking of it?
Yep.
And then it's funny you brought that up and mentioned that those two, I'm assuming, wrote it essentially.
Yeah. So once we get through the buzz roll stuff, that rest of that snare break, I mean, the way that it works with us, when I ask them to collaborate, it's, hey, I need this many bars. There are maybe these couple rules and parameters that you need to follow. You got to play the motif twice, like just little snippets of rules and guidelines. Then you just let them go, man, and they're rock stars.
Yeah, because they're in the thick of it. They really know what the people around them can handle in terms of difficulty. They know what everyone's going to enjoy playing because they're all friends with each other, and they probably drum a lot together, and like what people play when they're hacking around, and any unique skill sets they might have within the snare line or quad line or bass line or whatever. And that's what I was going to ask you actually next. It's funny you said that. I was just going to say, we've had a lot of designers on here that say when they get to a feature moment, they just kind of let the members or tech staffs like run wild with it almost to an extent. And you all have a few long extended feature moments. You have a quad feature, 2 snare features, the bass moment we mentioned. Was the bass line involved with that bass moment, or was that more of a collaboration between you all to plan all that out?
Yeah, so the bass feature is a little different, right? Where that snare feature is a kind of a member written piece. The bass feature is an orchestration between us.
Mm-hmm.
However, once it gets into the members' hands, that's where everyone gets to put their fingerprints on it a little bit. So like we conversations with the bass section leader on like, well, what's going to make this more comfortable? What's more impressive? We'll change a couple little things throughout there. The tenor stuff, same answer as before, man. You have Lee Hansen on your staff. You don't not utilize that man as a tool because he is a monster.
Can we just stop for a second and give Lee Hansen appreciation? Just the nicest guy ever.
Cheers, cheers, Lee.
If you see Lee Hansen in Dayton, give that man a hug. He's the greatest person you'll ever meet in your life.
So what I'm hearing is we need to have him on to do reaction videos with us so we can talk shit about groups with him, is what I'm hearing right now.
No. He's not going to talk shit. He'll give speech.
Yeah.
He'll give the most positive reactions to everything he encounters.
Sweet.
He's
the greatest guy ever.
Yeah.
He's also he's one of the founders too of Infinity. He's one of the main 3 founders, which is humbling.
Yeah, you got John Campese, Tom Hurst, and Lee Hansen founding this group.
What year did Infinity start? What was the first year?
The first year of Infinity was 2007, but it was before named First Degree. So I think they did 2005, 2006 as First Degree, and then rebranded to Infinity.
Okay.
Nice.
Well, Evan, you got that outline we sent. What else do you want to hit? We've been going for about 35 minutes.
I asked about costuming, but now I'm kind of more curious about, you mentioned with the snare line, those 2 guys just like running with the motif. Like, how do you guys pick a motif? Because I know the last few years you've kind of like decided like, all right, we're going to have this thing and we're going to like inflect it and interject it throughout the show in the battery in the front. Like, who decides what that is?
So the motifs, man, that's kind of a unique and special to Infinity. I started introducing them probably in 2020. That was the season that got shut down. But the way we get to them, they're what's called angel numbers. So if you're unfamiliar with angel numbers, they're numbers that appear in your life that have meaning or value, and they appear when you need them the most. So the number might have a specific meaning, and if you look up like these angel numbers, you're going to find 20 different meanings for each one of them, because the internet's the internet. So what we do is look through them and find one that's empowers the show, and then try to run with that. So this year's angel number that we write is 211, and its meaning is like spiritual awakening and renewal, and like you're ready to heal from your past or live your life to the fullest. So for us, like the way I interpret it is that motif 211 means like really being alive. So anytime the membership plays that, like that's kind of the weight behind the music. We have like 3 guiding principles: expression, purpose, and clarity. So like something like the motif, where you can have, add value to the music, and it's not just notes on a page for notes on a page sake, but it actually has some depth to it. We try to take advantage of that. Yeah, so you've seen like, you mentioned last couple of years, like last year was 4-5-4, and the year before that was 2-4, which is like the 24 hours everybody gets. So we try to take those and make them a through line through the program.
I remember Carson Frank had been messaging me on Instagram last year talking about the numerology from the 4-5-4, the intelligence, individuality, and creativity, and that was kind of woven throughout.
And so the 211 being this year's number, is that the sticking as well? 2 rights, a left, and a right of the.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. And you see it appear in a lot of different ways. I don't know how deep down the rabbit hole y'all want to go, but we can certainly dig in.
All the way down.
All the way. Alice in Wonderland.
You'll see it as a through line rhythmically through the entire program, often in a similar facet, but also the front takes it and manipulates it and changes it as well. So like it's also a melodic element as well as a battery voice element. One of my favorite utilizations of it, though, is at the top of the show when the battery first enters in. It's like we're talking about birth and like being alive and like with the body coming online. And so when you see the battery enter in, like they play that motif unison, but then one individual plays it and another individual plays it, and then unison again, another one. And we're treating it kind of like neurons firing for the first time. So that whole phrase is just like this build of neurons firing until boom, you take the first breath and like you're alive.
Does it start in like the Crotales? Is that what starts the show?
Yeah,
Very top of the show.
Yeah, very top of the show. We have it trading back between the Crotales and the bells, and the way we do it is 2 of the same pitch collections, one just an octave apart, E flat, and then a B flat and a D, so to get that 2-1-1 feel. And when Mitch and I were working on like what to fill out the space here, and we came up with those notes, I think we actually adjusted the notes to work with the 2-1-1 motif, and it sounded very Back to the Future, like when you watch those movies and just like something's up, it just like it reminded us of that, and it was just a beautiful way that we could introduce this nothingness soundscape with these neuron effects, and also panned because they're the way it's set up in the front ensemble. Crotales over here and the bells over there.
I love the Back to the Future reference. It's like, I mean, that whole thing is just like an epiphany. Like, great Scott, we're onto something, Marty.
Yeah, exactly.
So we did a huge divergent, which I told you guys before we started, like we're gonna follow this thing and we're just gonna completely blow it up, which is totally fine. I do want to try to stay on like what you guys are going for this year, and this is all fantastic, and go back a little bit to the visual side. We don't have any of the visual guys on, which I've kind of become obsessed with visual things in my aged out lifetime, but we talked about the costuming, and then I do want to touch on the props a little bit. So
for sure, yeah. The costuming is inspired by Tibetan monks, so that's where that Tibetan Book of the Dead comes in. So it's really pulled from that. Like we're trying to just have that kind of ambiance to it. As far as like the props go, um, they're multifaceted. Like that's kind of the great thing about doing these open-ended shows where like we can use these props to be anything that we need them to be. So at the beginning, that's more like the Big Bang expansion of the universe, and you see the boxes moving out, right? And then there's a moment where they're desks in a factory, and then there's a moment where they're like a mental defense mechanism of a wall, and then all of a sudden they're mirrors and they're self-reflective moments, and then you get to the end of the program, and then it turns out that we utilize them as coffins as well. So there's this moment of death at the end too. I think it's important to recognize though that it's not a show about death. I think it's a show about life. However, if you're looking at the show from a prop standpoint, there's also the element of anywhere the membership goes or the people go, like the props are always just behind them. So it's kind of that moment of like, you live your life to the fullest because death can always be right behind you at any given point. So there's like some layers to that.
Right.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
This year and last year, really. Well, and what was the other show? Continuum.
The time show.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Honestly, watching that show in person I was sad that I couldn't see it live again. To be honest.
That's what you love to hear as a designer. I'm sure.
Yeah. The way that you guys use the props and utilize to create just kind of wipe things off the floor and allow people to escape behind them and then reintroduce them. But then it was funny because you talked about reflection in that base moment, and there were two things that popped out to me just watching the show during those moments when the props were really close together and creating that wall. One was like the reflection pull. I don't know why my mind went to DC. I haven't been there since I was 10 years old, but the reflection pull at Washington, DC, just in the memorials there. And then the second one was the Vietnam Memorial, which this was probably not the intent at all, but this is what it reminded me of. When you look at that memorial, it's black. It's not very reflective in nature, and it has all those names etched into it. But when the sun hits it the right way, it just like washes out, and it just becomes almost like a mirror. And it's kind of interesting that this show's about life, because obviously that memorial is very indicative of preserving memories and life and what those people ultimately paid with their lives. But what you're able to get to with like there's the Viz ensemble person who just like at the end of that snare moment, like they hit that shot and then there's that breath and then she just kind of gets taken away, and just the reflection of yourself in life. And there's so many, like you said, esoteric meanings that you can take away from that of don't take a second for granted, or just, what you're seeing in the mirror. Did you guys intentionally mean like to create those as like, hey, we want to like have this reflection pushing back towards the audience, or kind of what was the design process through those props, and like, hey, we want to make them all reflective and then switch them around?
Well, our goal, and guys, please chime in, with the visual team is simplicity. So like you mentioned 2022 and even last year, like, yeah, the props were large scale, but ultimately they're simplistic. From a effects standpoint, I think the mirrors came secondary. Initially, it was just the boxes and how we can utilize those as a tool. And then when we knew that we were going to hit that reflective moment, it was like, well, do we bring out pieces of mirror? Do we do this thing? And I can't remember. It's probably Richard Craven's was brought up the idea of having them on the box. And then it was like, well, do we take it out of the box and put it on the box? Like, how does that last through the season? But functionality wise, like if you're trying to take a mirror and stick it onto a box, you're creating a really strange transitionary moment that you have to fight through as a visual designer. So ultimately it was like, well, we're just going to have these on here because they have real depth and meaning to the show. So it's okay that we have that. And that's one of those choices where it's like, you can either try to hide it or you can lean into it. And, we made a bold choice to lean into that. And I think it's pretty neat the way that it ended up.
For sure. I think it works well too, especially when you go from that contrast of reflective to obviously the black and the stark difference that you get when you turn it backfield. Is there anything to? I mean, I'm sure you guys aren't done with the show. Are you like saving some Easter eggs to like? Yeah, we got some surprises or what's coming down.
There's definitely some new stuff coming down, but I think as far as Easter eggs, Matt and Mitch, y'all have some pretty neat stuff in that outro. If you wanted to hit on that,
Yeah. You go, Mitch.
I mean, the show itself, yes, is about life and the journey we take. Starting from nothing, ending at nothing, and in our final moments, there's this idea that you see a light or your life flashes before your eyes, and we've taken that opportunity to kind of examine Infinity's history. So our outro, we have this final heartbeat moment that happens. The battery takes their drums off, and they make their way back to the boxes, which ultimately become coffins. But in that moment, musically, we reflect on Infinity's past, and a lot of the content in that moment are quotes from previous years. So actually, I want to let Matt take this one because it's super special. I love how you describe it, Tyler.
Yeah, well, it's a gift to every Infinity member, honestly. We have so many long-standing veterans. Like our Santa Marimba, I think she's been at Infinity for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Shout
she's
out
not
to
the
her.
only.
Yeah.
I know her name's Callie. I've taught her since high school. She's absolutely fantastic. But she marched in the first year that the original design team was at Infinity 2 in 2017. And so she's like the last one as well. So it's very special. Like her especially, like she has this, we call it the bliss lick, the inventing bliss lick. And it's a certain amount of pitch collections. And so she plays that in the outro. I have a bunch of students that I taught when I was at Infinity 2 who would play this lot tune that I wrote for them called Moments of Tangency. It's a very I guess a lyrical lot tune, you could say, and it has a deeper meaning to it. And they play those pitch collections. And once they saw the notes, they knew exactly what it was. Or Call from years past. I know some of the students who are at like Infinity 2 for the Fountain Year, they play that. Or at the very end, the Marimbas, they play my rookie year's season. They play a callback to Limitless from 2013. So it's riddled with infinity to like reflect. And it's so seamless the way it sounds. Like nobody's going to know, but I think that's also a gift to like an Infinity alumni. And
it's for you all. It's something in there for you all.
I love when groups do that.
Yep.
That's the thing with those motifs, man, where they're like no one's ever going to get that on a read. You know what I mean? That's all for the membership.
Yeah.
That takes
all of those motifs exist in this outro too. Like these things that are so special to us in these previous years all find their way within this moment. So our final moment of our life flashing before our eyes is also in this.
Man, you guys are gonna cry finals night.
We've already we got a count. We got a cry count.
But
we do.
That sort of stuff reminds me, and I don't even know if I've ever said this on this podcast, and I don't even know if Mike knows this, Fantini knows this. But that sort of stuff that's done for the membership reminds me of one of the other touching things that I ever remember was Rhythm X in 2008, the show Gone. The drum raps actually had the names written on them of members of the ensemble's loved ones that they've lost.
I did not know that. I did not know that.
Cry count's about to go up.
So
all right.
Stuff like that, like just that it makes it personal for the members and the staff, and it makes it more than an indoor show. Obviously, you want it to come across in a competitive aspect, but it's more than that. It's art, So and it's a memory. So I love that stuff.
That's
I-
wild to hear. Like, oh,
I
that
did
gives
not
me
know
like
that
I'm
at
gonna go
all.
watch that show. Oh,
Man, Gone is one of my favorite shows probably
Yeah.
in the history of the
oh,
activity.
Grace.
Not obviously I didn't know that little nugget that he just dropped there, but like just to hear there's that extra little element to it makes me like it even more. Like that was one of those shows I feel like that is just iconic to WGI indoor percussion. Yeah, that's wild.
That's the goal, right? It's just that, I don't know. At least that's our goal. Is like, can we make people feel something, anything, for even 3 seconds? If we can do that, then we did our jobs.
I think that is indicative of life, to go full circle here with what you guys are going for as the show. Like a lot of times people don't remember what you said, and a lot of times people don't even remember what you did, but they remember how you made them feel. And I'm actually reading a book right now. It's called Permission to Feel. And it's all about that, like how emotional intelligence kind of controls a lot of what we are able to consume from an intellectual standpoint. So yeah.
We're gonna have to
it's-
follow up on that after this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Well,
know what's
we
funny
didn't
is
tell you all this, but there's always a post-recording hangout
Yeah,
for
yeah.
like.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. We're gonna get into that. Love that.
Some
All right.
notes.
On that note.
Yeah. All right. We'll see everybody in the next one. Bye. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but seriously, I will open this up to like I kind of give you guys the red carpet if there's anything you want to just kind of roll out as we wrap this up, as far as what you want to portray or just as people watch the show. But we'll give you the floor for a second, and then we'll tie this thing up with a bow.
Well, just from the show standpoint, like I think when we were going through it earlier, like the horizontal elements, there's just 2 pieces left to it, right? So when you get past that self-reflective moment, then there's that more lyrical snare voice that comes through the mirrors, and that's like moment of acceptance and transcendence, and it builds up to this really grandiose reprise, of the John Bellion chart from the top of the show, and then ultimately you go through the outro, and then we're back to nothingness. So like the through line of the program is from nothing to nothing, and that just kind of bookends the show in a really, really neat and interesting and emotionally powerful way.
I think my piece with this and for an Infinity show is we want you to be a part of the experience. Like all intellectually, like we've been telling you about what all these little nuggets are, and it's so fun to like see y'all's notes. Like, is this what the Stonehenge thing is? And you're not the first to ever say is Stonehenge either. But it's maybe it's not that, but you're still trying to connect with it. Or is this the Vietnam War Memorial? And it's still connected in some way. And musically, we try to give like a really groovy section of our show that makes you. It's like musicians' music. We use Sun Gazer's Threshold, and we had to write it in 1916, which was like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? But
that piece is in 4/4 at 33 beats per minute is where that actually lies, and then we had to find a way to translate it to be able to march and move around to it.
So
talk about a math problem.
Yeah,
dude, seriously, we had the same thing last year. We actually made a mistake the way we arranged like the Plini tune last year. We should have wrote it in 4/4 with like 7-lits, but we did like, I don't know,
7/4.
7/4. Everybody was.
We
that was
fixed
like
it. It was a quick. We sent it out, and then we were like, "Hold on," and then we went and adjusted it.
Disregard that email. We'll give you a new one soon.
Yeah. But I think it's important. Like we do all these things in terms of like trying to capture a part of the moment in the show, whether it's emotional or just like really enjoying the music. So we want you to feel like you're a part of the bubble, versus like watching the snow globe effect of a show.
I like that analogy.
I like that.
The thing with these shows that we've lately been trying to put together is like, what's the one thing people can relate to? And just live. Everybody has an end date to their life. Whether you accept it or not, like everything eventually ends. Something we all share. So being able to put a show out where we express, the importance of living your life to the fullest, because this inevitable thing happens. It's something that like people can connect to. We find a lot of importance in creating something where the audience has an investment in it. You know, last year it was the importance of creating art for yourself, whether or not, you know, somebody has, you know, an influence on you or not. Like just being able to do that. This year, it's how do you as an individual live your life so that it's, you know, the fullest it can be. So I think everybody generally has these feelings, you know, they can get behind it. They can really connect to this idea. So it's pretty fun to build a show around, I don't know how to say it, but like,
You're basically building a show around like endless possibilities because everyone's
Yes.
path is like a different journey.
for sure.
So, which is great because it's super personable. It's super open-ended and esoteric, like we've stated. So, like,
Yes.
Open to interpretation.
it's easy
so
for
different-
people to apply themselves to it.
There it is.
Open to interpretation, so different audience members based on their life experiences are going to relate to it in different ways and see different things on the floor based on the way it's designed, is the way I look
Obviously,
at it.
I did. It took me back to 10-year-old Evan at the Vietnam War Memorial, which I don't even really know how I got there. But
That's
you know what?
the coolest thing is that you found your own like
Yeah.
story to put to this, and it's like that makes sense. Like that's awesome that the audience can do that. So it's exciting. I can't wait to hear like what others might be able to pull from this. You know, what
We're
is
gonna
your
make
story?
that an open invitation. So when we post this, for everyone who watches the Infinity show, you know, give us your interpretation of some of these moments, how it resonates with you. Like, share with it. I think that's what's the great
Pretty
about
cool.
this is it makes it a community. You know, and what your interpretation is. So you know, share the love.
Yep. Let us know down in the comments. And honestly, unless you've got anything else, I don't know of any better way. That was a nice bow on this whole conversation. I feel like we just put on the present.
I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I knew I was going to enjoy doing these designer sit downs because I've said it on here. I'm like a broken record for those I'm sure that have been listening for a long time. I'm like a math person, very ones and zeros when my brain works. I'm not like, I call myself a drummer, not even a musician. Like I am obviously a musician, but like I am such a snare head, and that's just like my rhythmic box I've lived in my whole life. And this whole thing has made me like opened my eyes and take the blinders off. And like this conversation, I already can't wait to go watch your all show again. I did it after we talked to Shane and Mystique. I want to do it again now because I know I'm just going to watch from start to finish and pick up on all these things that I wouldn't have otherwise. So anybody else still listening at this point, one, thank you for still listening an hour in. Two,
They're here.
I highly recommend go as soon as you turn this off. Take 7 minutes. There's plenty of runs on YouTube. I think the Orlando
Go to a show.
prelims. Yeah, go watch it. If you're not in Florida, you can't see it in person or the in finals, go watch it and let us know what you think.
Last thing, shout out Timpani run into the battery segue.
Timpani drum set combo. Yeah.
2024 is the year of
caught
the
it.
timpani. So
You caught it. It was a timpani drum set combo, and it was like,
Yeah.
they got that.
Yeah,
that's
Evan's
it.
been on a timpani kick for a while. We've been listening to some Jeff
love it.
Prosperi tapes, and he loves himself some timpani. So yeah, but yeah, you all got anything else?
Appreciate it.
Man,
Thank
just
you.
how cool it is that y'all do this. I think, you know, we're definitely appreciative, but it's such a cool resource that y'all provide for the activity and the culture. So thank you guys. This is really, really cool. It's been great.
No, thank you. Thanks for coming on. Everybody else, comment, like, subscribe, share it with anyone you think would like it. Hit the join button on YouTube, patreon.com, Facebook, and Instagram. Give us a follow there if you want to never miss any updates, and we'll see everybody in the next one.
Peace.
Later.